Welcome into a brand new Tuesday Scramble. It's February 22nd, 2022. That is a lot of twos. I'm Rick Gehman. That right there, Andy Lack. And my dude, what's going on?
Not much, man. Excited to be here. It feels like it's been a while. It's a long weekend at Riviera, but I am excited for the Honda Classic. I think this is a really fun and interesting tournament.
Yeah, we are going to recap the Genesis just for a bit. We're going to do a lot of previewing of the Honda Classic. We will get to our props. We will get to head-to-head matchups. We will talk one and done. We'll do all that fun stuff. And we are, of course, presented by PrizePicks. We're going to do an entire segment on this, but they've got hole-by-hole scoring. They've got bear trap scoring. There's just a lot happening. If you want to sign up, the code you're looking for is Rick. It's a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. But Andy, shall we start with the Genesis? Shall we start with Joaquin Niemann going wire to wire at one of the bigger events of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it was such an incredible performance. I think the thing about Neiman that always has my attention is he's so much younger than I think, right? Like he's younger than all those guys like Scheffler and Zalatoris and even guys like Sahith, he's younger than. But he's been playing on the PGA Tour, right, for so long. And he got that early win at the Greenbrier. And then I don't want to say slowed down, but he didn't win for a while, right? And he lost in that playoff last year at Detroit Golf Club Rocket Mortgage, where he didn't make a bogey until the playoff hole. And it feels like he kind of got lost in that conversation a little bit where he wasn't getting mentioned with the Zalatorises and the Schefflers. And now I think you have to. I mean, he has firmly entered the chat.
Yeah, so, geez, we've been on a run here, right? It's been like Luke List, Scotty Scheffler, Joaquin Niemann, all these guys who are like, hey, go out and get a win. Go get your first win or get your second win after a long period of time. Go, like, you need a win. Feels like we've been rattling these off the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it sure. I mean, a lot of guys that were kind of like darlings in the fantasy community that guys like me and you talk about every week, like Luke List, big stat model guys and stuff like that. So we'll see if we can keep it going with the Honda this week and see if this is a very strange tournament. So we'll see. But I think my question for you about Niemann is, where does he stack up now? Is he winning a tournament like Riviera? Does that put you ahead of guys, in your opinion, like Scheffler and Wolf, who haven't won a tournament as big as this one, but they've also been in the mix in majors? Or like even Hovland? Hovland hasn't won a tournament even remotely as big as what Niemann just did.
It's interesting, right? Because I don't necessarily think winning this specific event is some type of springboard. It's obviously incredibly impressive, but I feel for Niemann specifically kind of the same way I felt before, which is he's going to be volatile, still very, very young. His swing, Andy, unlike a lot of other swings on the PGA Tour, and I think that he is kind of a streaky golfer, and he might rattle off a couple of victories in a short period of time, and he might go through long stretches. I do not consider him to be a consistent guy, but I absolutely see him as a high upside ceiling guy.
What's the best Niemann's ever done in a major? I can look that up really quickly.
I looked it up. Yeah, look it up for me, but I believe it's like a T30 or T20 something at like the US Open a couple of years ago. His major championship record, I don't believe, is all that great. It's not bad. It's just not like he hasn't been in contention at a major, I don't think.
My page froze for a second, but you know where I like him? British, like at the Open Championship, right? Because he's got kind of that low piercing ball flight.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting. Here's his major championship. So T23 at the US Open in 2020. That's his best result. He's missed the cut in, what is that, 5 of his like 10 or 12 starts, a bunch of, last year he actually made the cut in all 4 major championships, but it was T40, T30, T31, T59. So that's kind of how we start to separate guys, right? Now that you've got that second victory on the PGA Tour, especially a big one like this, if he goes out, gets a third regular PGA Tour victory or something like that, we're going to start wondering where the performances are in major championships. And that's a gift and a curse, Andy, because we don't ask that of guys that are of lesser caliber.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a fair take. The other thing that's interesting to me is Cameron Young. Like, was there ever a week for Cameron Young to do something like that at Riviera on a weekend and not be the prevailing story coming out of it is kind of crazy to me. But man, he's another guy that can really play. Hits the ball a mile.
I was sitting here Saturday night and I was like, oh my God, like if Joaquin Niemann wasn't just absolute ceiling right now, I think what he opened like 63, 63, we'd be like, holy crap, Cam Young is 3 clear of the field with 18 holes to go. And it's a bunch of big names right behind him. Yeah. So hat tip to Cam Young, played well, played in the final group. I mean, was awesome, but yeah, how is he's not the story, which is kind of wild.
He's not the story. If anything, I think Morikawa maybe coming out of that week is more pertinent on people's minds, which, man, is there anyone more dangerous to have in your rear view mirror? I mean, it feels like he just, when he gets a taste of it, he just closes, right? And he obviously didn't get it done this time, but once he started making putts and chipping in, I was surprised that he missed that. I don't know if it was like a 9-footer on 18. It really felt like he was picking up momentum. If the tournament went maybe 3 holes longer, I think Morikawa would have won.
Well, and that would have been birdie on 16, 17, and 18 for I think the second straight day. He closed Saturday birdieing 16, 17, and 18. He birdied 16 and 17 on Sunday, has a look at it on 18. That would have been a lot of pressure to put on Joaquin Niemann. And you're right. I think if they play 2 or 3 more holes, we might be talking about Morikawa with another win.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that we didn't see more from a guy like Justin Thomas over the weekend, right? This is the second time where, because the same thing happened at Torrey Pines. JT got in great position heading into the weekend, both weeks at Torrey Pines and Genesis. JT was plus 380 heading into the weekend of the Genesis this week, right? His odds were better than Cameron Young. He was the guy that was directly in Niemann's rearview mirror, and he kind of stopped and started a little bit. And I guess the putter was a little bit better, but yeah, I kind of was thinking about JT a lot recently because I feel like he's close, but at the same time, not able to get that one low one over the weekend.
Yeah, he's been very close often, but has not cashed in a win since the Players' Championship last year. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of that. And Andy, you were probably playing really close attention to him because he was your one and done selection last week, $435,000, bringing your season long total to $1,895,450. Let me see what I had last week. Let me see. 0 again. Bubba Watson misses the cut, and I have yet to make a dime this year. And I can see in the chat that Zach Jeffers is just here for the curse. DL is here to find out who my one and done pick is and to fade it. We talked about this on Saturday. I think it's actually harder to do what I'm doing than to actually pick good guys for the one and done. But the update speaks for itself here.
Well, I saw your pick in the outline. I think you have a good pick this week. Yeah, I mean, it is remarkable the odds that these guys keep missing the cut. Like I said last week, stick to your process. I use some big, would you be happy with a solo 6 out of JT and a T3 out of Rahm? Because I've used 2 of, in my opinion, the best 5 players in the world. Yeah. And I think I'm okay with a solo 6 and a T3 out of them.
Especially in our format where it's just the two of us. I think you just bank those the entire time and you hope that I don't win the Players Championship or something like that. But it would be a little. I shouldn't say that. If there's a lot of people in your one and done, multiple thousands, you might feel a little bit upset. But listen, I mean, if you're piling up $300,000 or $400,000 every single week, that puts you in a really good spot in most situations by the end of the season.
Yeah, and I will say, you getting nothing out of Bubba Watson, like, where else were you going to use Bubba Watson,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
Travelers maybe. I don't know.
Hovland hurts. I will say that when you did getting a
That
miscut out of
hurts.
Hovland hurts,
Yeah.
but Bubba, it's like, I don't even know if I'm ever going to use Bubba.
Yeah, what did Hovland do the week before and after I picked Victor? It was like T3, T2 or something, like, what I
Yeah,
T3, T3.
that's
It's like,
how it works.
great,
Always.
cool,
Yeah.
cool. Okay. Also, very exciting news. You, my friend Andy, are coming on my podcast, 300 Yards to Unknown, this week. Which, by the way, do you like this? I've got the shirt made up, the 300 Yards to Unknown shirt.
I love that.
Which is going to be great because I'll be in studio at the Win, and you and I are going to deep dive the Saudi stuff, which has been changing drastically. We're going to talk about how we got here, where we stand now, and is it dead or what are we looking for in the future? So I'm very excited about that. We're just going to because it deserves a deep dive. There's so much going on. It's quite confusing, honestly.
I'm super excited for that too. I think it's fascinating. I can't tell if this story is underreported. I can't tell what the appetite is for this between like regular golf fans. I don't really know if this is something people care about. It's certainly something I care about. So I'm excited to talk more with it about you because I think it's absolutely fascinating what's happening right now. And part of the time I'm like, how is this not a bigger deal?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the most popular golfers to ever play the game it was in charge of a coup attempt to create another organization. Like it's fascinating. It really is fascinating when you dive into I was writing out the timeline for our outline for the show, and I was like, "Holy crap! Did all of this stuff really happen?" So, yeah, it'll be exciting. I think we're definitely gonna record it on Thursday, and it'll probably be out later that afternoon. So I'm looking forward to it.
Can you think of a more ideal situation for Netflix, right? For this to happen, right? Like I could not think, and I hope they utilize that stuff. Like I hope they have a storyline on it because
I mean, it has been asked every single presser for every golfer. They've been asked about their thoughts about the new league. So I hope there is a lot of stuff on it in the Netflix doc. It'd be great.
Yeah. Well, tune into our Thursday show for an extensive deep dive on that. I'm super excited to chat with you more about it.
Yeah, should be a blast. We'll dive into that, but we're going to dive into the Honda Classic on the other side. We're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. Andy, hit it.
Remember, Andy Lack is not only the co-host of The Scramble, but also produces his own show, the Inside Golf Podcast. It's available twice a week, focusing on course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategies for every PGA Tour event. Admittedly, I was drawn to Andy for his data-driven approach, which you'll find on his Sunday shows as he breaks down the field, but I'm even more impressed by his passion for course architecture, which offers a different perspective of our great game. Mix those two together with insightful and humorous guests who don't take themselves too seriously, and you've got a recipe for a great podcast. Follow Inside Golf on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
The Honda Classic, the first leg of the Florida Swing. It is here, and we've got a couple of big events coming up, but we're going to start here at PGA National. And Andy, your podcast earlier in the week, it came out on Sunday, was fascinating. You always have great insight on the golf course. So why don't you give us an idea of the tough test that these players are going to be facing this week?
Yeah, I think this is a super interesting course. I mean, there's water everywhere, right? I believe there's 26 individual water hazards, and water comes into play on 15 holes, often on the approach shot and off the tee as well. So what I think is interesting about this course is you actually have a situation where this course plays closer to a major championship than most of the courses we see on the regular PGA Tour schedule. Now, a lot of that is because of the water. A lot of that is because of the wind. It's usually very windy there, right? And a lot of that is because of the firm and fast conditions as well. So this is a rare opportunity on the PGA Tour where I don't think the winning score has been anything lower than -12 in the last 10 years. And I think it usually hovers around that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mark, which I don't know. I wonder if that's maybe if it's the schedule spot or players have too much of an ego to go to a course where they're writing down bigger numbers part of the time. But it's a really interesting week where we get a really difficult test of golf that you generally only see at major championships, but not a great field. So where does that kind of leave us is kind of the interesting thing to think about when thinking about it from a betting perspective.
Yeah, I think the field is a little bit of a casualty to the schedule. You know, they're going to go to API. They're just coming from Riviera. We've got the Players Championship in a couple of weeks. So there's just a lot going on, and they're not going to play 4 or 5 weeks in a row. But it's an okay field. Golf is so deep now, and I like all of these guys so much. I don't even care when the field is technically weaker. But I do think there is a bit of a mindset change. I think there are a lot of guys out there who, when they get to Shriners and they say, oh my God, I've got to get to 25 under par to win this thing, like I have no chance. I have no chance. But when you sit down and say, okay, if I shoot a 68, 2 under every single day, I'm going to be in the thick of this. It's not just to make the cut, but to, contend for victory. And I do think that there are some guys that lick their chops when they get to situations like this, even though it will be a tough test.
I would completely agree with you. I think there's some, and players will say this too in the quotes, like guys like Zalatoris has said even recently, he's like, I think my game is better suited for major championship courses. Guys understand this, right? Guys like Patrick Reed, for example, who has a really great short game, right? And he's a really good wind player and he's a really good scrambler and stuff like that. And guys like Christian Bezadenhout and Mackenzie Hughes, where if you get a low greens in regulation percentage and everyone's missing these greens and bunker play suddenly really matters and short game really matters and scrambling suddenly really matters. And it's not just always about who can get crazy, crazy hot with the putter. It's more about who can survive. Noren is another guy that comes to mind. I agree. I think you want to really be targeting those types of players that have shown us before that they can play great in wind. They can play great in major championships. They're good scramblers. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those players later when we talk about our one and dones and the prize picks, but I completely agree. I think you specifically want to be looking for types of guys who thrive in those conditions.
Were you a little bit surprised by the odds board this week? Because when I woke up on Monday morning and saw that Tommy Fleetwood was 14-1 and that Brooks Koepka was at the time, I think he was 22-1. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, what's going on here? And they've got, Sung Jae and Tommy and Louis Oosthuizen, Daniel Berger, Billy Horschel, like all at the top of the board. Is there anything that kind of surprised you from the makeup of that betting board this week?
So yes, because, and here was my take on my working theory with Berger. I want to float this by you because maybe you have an opinion on this to help me try and figure this out. My thought was, obviously we have the injury concern going on with Berger right now, right? My thought was if they opened Berger at 12 or 13-1 and he was the favorite, then there was a very good chance that Berger was completely healthy because I think that sportsbooks, if I had to guess, they probably have more information than
you
people
think they're in the
Twitter.
know. You think they're reaching out to the Berger team?
I do think so. A little bit, right? So the fact that Berger opens up at 18-1 behind guys like Fleetwood and stuff like that, because statistically, Rick, you know better than anyone else, like you can make a very, very easy case that Berger should be the favorite this week, statistically, right? So that was a working theory that I had to see Berger open up at 18-1, same price as Billy Hole, behind guys like Fleetwood. That makes me a little bit more concerned about his injury.
So when you start kind of, breaking this whole thing down, and you've seen that we've had a couple of longer shot winners win this event, do you think that there's an increased level of volatility? Did your betting card, or will your betting card kind of focus on some of those triple digit guys? Or do you think that the vast majority of the win equity lives at the top of this board?
I'm pretty concentrated at the top. I mean, I don't have anyone below 20, but I think 4 or 5 guys in between 20 and 80, right? And you actually look at it over the years, Rick. So what I found super interesting was 4 of the last 10 years, a guy under 20 to 1 has won this tournament.
Right.
With Adam Scott, Ricky Fowler, Rory, Justin Thomas, I think. And 4 out of the last 10 years, a guy above 300 to 1 has also won this tournament.
The 2 ends of the spectrum.
So what does that mean? Nothing,
Probably
in
nothing,
my opinion.
right.
Yeah, bet the guys who you want to bet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. And just in terms of kind of Florida, right? We did the California swing. We're getting to Florida. These are generally courses that are, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, generally more flat. The greens also lacking the undulation that we might have seen at some parts of the California swing. And of course, the main design feature seemingly water and also concerns around wind. Is that an accurate assessment of what we're going to get in Florida?
Very accurate assessment. And I think one thing to keep in mind is a lot of the guys in this field are very used to playing Florida golf, right? I mean,
they all live there. Yeah.
they all live there, right? So even if their course history or, even if guys haven't played here before or haven't played super well here before, chances are like the best comp courses that you're going to find for this week are not courses on the PGA Tour. They're actually courses like the Bears Club and Medalist that these guys play every single day. So I do think, how much are you weighing that, Rick? Like how much? I always struggle with kind of unquantifiable things, but are you specifically giving a bump to guys that are, live in the Jupiter area?
I do also struggle with saying, oh, well, if you're, living the Jupe life, I'll give you 15% extra or something like that. I don't know what the number is, but we hear it all the time from these guys, and the stats tend to bear it out. They're a little bit noisy, but they do tend to bear it out. Like where if you're playing in a place where you are more familiar, whether that's because you grew up there, you went to college there, you live there now, they play better. And it doesn't necessarily mean their home course, but a lot of guys talk about, hey, I can read the grain a little bit better when I'm in Florida or something like that, or the way that my club interacts with the grass. I'm just more familiar with it. I'm doing less guessing. So I don't know how to quantify it either, Andy, but yeah, it is by all accounts a real thing.
Yeah. And I've been banging the drum on agronomy matters for a very long time. And the only reason why I got to that point was from reading the player quotes, right? Like the players say this, right? Like I was even reading one from Russell Henley where he said, I struggle. I don't feel super comfortable on the West Coast, right? I don't love POA. I'm very, very comfortable on Bermuda, right? And I think you can kind of look at that and say, okay, these guys are very comfortable playing Florida golf. These guys are very comfortable on Bermuda. This is where they practice, right? So all of the weeks that they're not playing, they're grinding under these types of conditions. I do think it matters some. And I talked about it a little in my podcast. I was like, okay, here are the list of guys that I can find that I know live in Palm Beach County. How much I want to talk about it because I think it's important. How much you want to weigh that, completely up to you.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, here's what we are going to do. We've got to get to the picks, what everybody is here for, apparently. We're going to do our one and done. We're going to do head-to-head matchups, and we're going to do props because there's big news. There's a lot to unwrap, and I think there's a lot of money to be made, but we're going to do it right after this break.
All of the tools and data that you see me use on this channel is from my site, RickRunGood.com. RickRunGood.com is one of the largest golf databases on the planet, and it's geared towards making your DFS and betting research process as efficient as possible. There are literally millions of data points in the database, and while that might sound intimidating, the tools that I've built allow you to cut through the data quickly, choose what's important to use, and even build lineups that are ready for import directly into DraftKings. Outside of that, membership gets you access to the Slack channel, currently 2,000 run gooders who are ready to share insights and have a little fun. I love it, and you will too. Sign up at RickRunGood.com.
Let's prop it like it's hot. Yeah, we're going to go through the props available at PrizePicks, and they have been absolutely killing it this golf season. So they've made a big investment into the product. You no longer have to choose one over and one under. You can kind of stay on the same side of things. The offerings, Andy, have been Huge, right? I mean, the hole by hole stuff. They did hole 11 scoring last week. They're doing it again this week with not only 2 separate holes that you can do single hole props on, but they've created props for the bear trap. So you can pick a golfer. Everybody is set to 10.5 strokes to get through the bear trap. You can go over or under, which is going to be an unbelievable sweat, I imagine.
Yeah, and we have specific bear trap data, right? So you can look at, you can look at guys who over the years have been really, really good on this stretch of holes and who have been terrible. Off the top of my head, it's like Ryan Palmer's been the worst, right? Russell Knox has been the best.
So that is, I believe, in terms I think that's total. Yes, to total score to par. I believe that is correct. And Ryan Palmer's just like dumped a million balls into the drink and all that good stuff. So, I'll show you in a second, a spreadsheet that I have, but the low key awesome thing about this, and this is really smart by PrizePicks. The featured holes, like the PGA Tour live coverage, 15 and 17, the 2 par 3s that are in the bear trap, they're both featured holes. And I imagine they're going to show a lot of 16 as well. So you're not only going to be able to make the props, you're going to be able to watch them, which to me is like the main reason most of the people do this, right? Like if I bet something on Ryan Palmer or I have him in my DraftKings lineup, like I want to see his shots. And the fact that they chose a way to make sure we can see the shots is like I cannot wait to just fire up featured holes and have at this.
Very smart, right? This is the future. This is something that we've talked about a bunch before on this show. It's like, how can we line these up to service the needs of people like us as the gambling and fantasy industry continues to grow? And I think what PrizePicks is doing is really smart, right? We've talked about this before too, Rick, where, anytime a course has some character, is really good for the PGA Tour, right? Is really good for that tournament. And what is the character of the Honda Classic, right? It's the bear trap. It's the fact that this course is super, super hard. And everyone knows this and everyone's afraid of the bear trap and how difficult it is. Lean into that, right? Like lean into that. That's what everyone should be doing.
Highly recommend you use the code Rick if you want to sign up and play and join, because it's been awesome. And you know what this is really setting up for, Andy? Like imagine, I'll guarantee it right now, there will be an Amen Corner prop, right? Which is just going to be absolutely perfect. Again, it aligns with the stream. No better time. And it resolves itself in what, 45 minutes, whatever it takes to play those 3 holes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be special. I'm loving what's coming out of PrizePicks right now.
Probably a 17th hole at Sawgrass too, right?
Oh, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
See all these holes that have like a iconic hole or iconic stretch of holes, like it makes too much sense to just fire those up as props.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm actually going to start with mine because we're talking about the bear trap.
Okay.
So, Mina, share my screen here. It's got here we go. So I've compiled the data for, and I'm actually going to email this out in my newsletter, hopefully today, with all of the golfers that are available on PrizePicks and all of the times they've gone through the bear trap, Andy. So it's par 3, par 4, par 3. And there's a couple of things worth noting. Let me see if I can scroll down a little. There we go. Ricky Fowler has played the bear trap 20 different times. He has gone under 10.5. So basically playing it in par or better 85% of the time. On the flip side, Patrick Reed's only gone through it 4 times, has never played it at par or better. First, let's start with this, Andy. Do you think this matters, right? Do you think that this is predictive information, or do you think it is a bit reactive?
Loaded question, Rick. Predictive. I don't know if predictive is the right word. I do think that certain players, these are specific holes, and certain holes can fit a player's eye based on shot shape. And when you're dealing with 20 plus rounds of data, I think that is a large enough sample size to say, okay, this hole specifically fits a player's eye. So predictive, I'm not sure, because once you get into the word predictive, you're also dealing with all these other variables, which is like, listen, when Ricky played the bear trap, he was a different player than Ricky is right now. So maybe Ricky stood on the 16th tee, and that was when Ricky was one of the best 30 iron players in the world. And he said, okay, I hit my 7-iron really, really good right now. Ricky may not be that guy right now. So I think predictive, I'm not so sure about predictive, but I do think there's something to it. I think you should look at it.
Okay, well, this leads me into my first prop, which is Alex Noren to go through the bear trap in under 10.5 for round one. And if you look at the numbers, he's played the bear trap 10 different times. On 8 occasions, he has gone under. He is also, believe it or not, Andy, 12th in par 3 scoring this year, which I think makes sense because like par 3, if you make a par on a par 3, you're doing very well, right? On the PGA Tour. These guys make their hay on the 5s and the 4s. A 3 scoring average on the par 3s is really, really good. And he's kind of that grinder, right? If he misses the green, I trust him to get up and down. I think when you're playing hard holes like this, and it's kind of bared out by the 10 trips through the bear trap, I think he's up for the challenge.
Yeah, 100%. I bet Alex Noren this week. So
Cool.
give me
Yeah,
all the Alex Noren everywhere. He is a Bears Club guy. He will be sleeping in his home bed. I actually have one of the guys that I play out here in California with play some golf with Noren down at the Bears Club in Florida in the wintertime. Lives on the range, Rick. Like literally sleeps there.
Yeah, he's a grinder.
He is an absolute grinder. And so I think this is kind of the perfect setup for him this week. Like Noren's the type of player, Rick, where our players are going to hit it in the water this week, right? Like there's too many landmines. If Noren hits his opening tee shot in the water, I trust him to rebound.
I completely agree with you. So Noren under 10.5 round one. That will be my first PrizePicks prop for this week. Andy, why don't we move on to your first for this week?
So I've just been loving these greens and regulations ones, Rick, and I try and do some different ones, but there were 2 greens and regulation ones that really caught my attention. It's just a math equation, right? So Billy Horschel, let's start with him. He's 112th in this field in strokes gained approach. He's lost 12.4 strokes on approach this year through 4 tournaments. And PGA National has a greens and regulation percentage of just under 59%. So Billy Horschel, who's a below average iron player, they're saying, well, he's going to go way above what average iron players on PGA National should hit about 10.7 greens per round. But now you're taking a below average iron player and asking them to hit over 12. Like, go to PrizePicks right now and take advantage of this stuff, please.
Yeah, so I should note the bear trap lines probably aren't moving. The single hole lines, I think they're hard to move because you can't really move them. 4.5 last week, 10.5 this week. It's going to be hard to move. These are moving. These are the ones that move right after it comes out of Andy's mouth or right after an email gets sent out or a tweet gets sent out. So if you want Billy Horschel under 12 and not under 11.5, which he will almost certainly be in about 30 minutes, you should go do it right now. Right? That's what we've seen, Andy.
Yeah, and they should be moving some of these based on action and stuff like that. And I think they generally start high, which makes sense to me, Rick, because I think just in general at a macro level, people like rooting for overs. But I also think that's why you see on this show, we both tend to give out a lot of unders. Yeah, because there's a lot of opportunity there. Exactly.
All right. Well, I've got an over for you for my next one, but in golf, over in this situation is kind of like bad. So I'm going with Brooks Koepka over 68.5 strokes in round one. And Andy, I stared at this for a long time. I'll be the first to admit I have no idea what version of Brooks Koepka we are going to get this week. I don't know what version we're going to get from him from day to day. But the way that I kind of looked at this is to get beat on this, a 68 is likely going to be about 3 strokes better than the field when this scoring average comes out probably around 71 or something like that, like we've seen historically. And he's only gained 3 strokes on the field 3 times in the 20 rounds that he's played around PGA National. So I'm willing to just kind of embrace the volatility of Brooks Koepka, say, go out and try to gain 3 shots on the field in round one. I don't think you can do it, but man, no outcome would be all that surprising for me this week.
I am so lost with Brooks, Rick, at this point. Like, I can't think of a player that I've gotten wrong more consistently than Brooks. I'm with you. I don't really know what to make of him either, but I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume that his game is still not great right now. And especially, when you factor in the long-term scoring average of how this course plays, I think that number's too low.
Andy, we've got Billy Horschel under 12 greens in regulation. We've got Brooks Koepka over 68.5 in round one. We've got Alex Noren going through the bear trap in under 10.5 strokes. Round us out with your final prop for this week.
Okay, so I went back to the well with the greens and regulations one because, again, I think these are too high, and I think all of our listeners should use promo code Rick right now and bet these. But I looked at Gary Woodland under 12 greens in regulation, right? And I like Gary Woodland as a player a lot. I've been banging the drum that he's going to have a resurgent season. Panic level on that take is increasing by the week, I will say. And I look at someone like Woodland who has lost on approach in 2 of 3 starts last year, and he's just downright a below average iron player right now. So you can continue to play the numbers and say, okay, an average iron player should hit 10.8, 10.9, 10.7 greens in regulation at PGA National. So why is the over under 12, right? Yeah. I don't know. Who can say? So I'm just going to continue to bet the under.
Who can say? I love that. Yeah. There is a comment that I want to get to because I think this is interesting. So the comment here from Five Incos Daves says, hey, Rick, with PrizePicks now having hole-specific props, is there an edge we can gain from looking at the pins the PGA releases the night before? So I believe there is, Andy. I believe it's one part of the problem solving. So if you're not subscribed or getting notifications when PGA Tour comms tweets, you're doing it wrong. It's all of the withdrawals. It's the whole locations. It's the pairings. It's BS like that most people don't care about, but it's very, very handy. And when you look at pin positions, Andy, you can go back and you can look at historic pins. You can kind of see how guys have access to it. There's obviously things like wind and rough and every other condition that's going on the course. But I do think we get that info the night before. It's part of the puzzle.
Yeah. And you did a really good job talking about it with Riviera, with the par 5 hole that helped us make some money on PrizePicks too, by looking at that specific pin position. And you can say, okay, when this pin's over here, that completely changes the entire strategy of the hole. So I think there's a ton of merit into looking at it. The only issue that I would say is they released the pins, the night before, like 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern.
Correct.
So the numbers may have moved a little bit by then, but I think you absolutely should look at it. Yeah.
If you want to talk about inside information, and people probably don't realize this, if you know a caddy, you can know the pins 24 hours in advance because and you probably know this, Andy, when they're playing round one, there is a very small white spray painted dot on the green somewhere that will be the next day's pin position. So when you see those guys get to the green, you'll actually see them walking off other parts of the green because that tells them where the pin is going to be tomorrow. So if you have access to a caddy out there on the PGA Tour, you can actually get the pins much earlier than what the PGA Tour comms tweets them out.
Okay, so message us if you're on site this week, and we will continue to eat on these PrizePicks.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, if you're out there, you can usually see. I'm always looking for the little white spray painted dot. It's very small. It's like the size of a nickel, maybe a quarter. If you can see it, tell us where the pins are going to be on the following day, because that would be very, very handy. Okay, Andy. We've got to get to our head-to-head matchups, which, by the way, 2 winning weeks for us. I'll describe that in just 1 second. And, of course, we are going to give our one-and-done selections, but I'm going to take a quick coffee break, and we'll see you on the other side. If you're not playing daily fantasy on PrizePicks, then you're not really playing daily fantasy. They offer nothing but props, and they do it better than anyone else. You pick 2 to 5 players on an over-under and can win up to 10 times on any entry. They allow mixed sport entries, meaning you can take the over on LeBron James and the under on Jon Rahm. The golf-specific props are amazing. Birdies or better, fairways hit, greens in regulation, round score, and now, yes, single
single hole props. That's right. What score will a golfer make on a specific hole? I have PrizePicks specific tools on my website to help you build the best entries, and now PrizePicks is offering a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Just use the code RICK at sign up or click the link in the description. That's code RICK. Good luck.
2 winning weeks for us in the head-to-head matchups last week. I went 3-2, climbing back to close to 500 for the year, now 9-11. But Andy, 5-0, which is the second time in 4 weeks you have done that, and your total, since we've been keeping track of this, 14-6. So my friend, a big hat tip to you, because you've been lining my pockets with some matchup picks.
Yeah. So one thing that I've always said, Rick, is that we're both in the content business where we do a bunch of shows. And I think what people really care about on Twitter for the most part is talking about outrights, right? Like outrights. That's typically what I tend to talk about on my show. We go through the betting board and look at everyone's outrights numbers. But if you ask like professional gamblers how they make money betting off of golf and how they build a bankroll long term, it's all through these matchups. And I've had a ton of success betting matchups. I know they aren't as sexy as the outrights, but I really think there's a huge opportunity there if you're willing to take them. I know the scores aren't as big, but I'm really glad we've integrated them as a part of the show, because it's a part of my process every single week.
Yeah, and it also just allows us to talk about more golfers and really dive into it, because the matchups that I'm pulling here, these are from DraftKings. Sometimes I use Caesars. You know, you might not have access to all of these matchups, but talking about more individual players, I think, is helpful for everyone. So let's jump this off with kind of an interesting one. Brooks Koepka Brooks Koepka versus Keith Mitchell. Obviously, we talked about Brooks Koepka already, Andy, but Keith Mitchell's been great around PGA National. Which side would you like on this matchup?
I'm going to go with Keith Mitchell. I really like Keith Mitchell this week. Obviously, he's a former winner here, so we know he could do it on this course. And Keith Mitchell's just playing some really, really good golf right now. He was lingering in Phoenix. The ball striking's been excellent. I look at Keith Mitchell's game and I think, what is Keith Mitchell's biggest weakness? Historically, it's been irons, and that's what he's really starting to turn around lately. So I love a guy like Keith Mitchell, who I think is really starting to figure out the weakest point of his game, and now returns to a course that he's already experienced loads of success at.
Yeah, I'm with you on Keith Mitchell. One of the ways to get in trouble around PGA National is you hit it in the water. You can do that on your tee shot. You can do it on your approach shot. Keith Mitchell is phenomenal off the tee and has been for a while. And as Andy indicates, the approach play coming around. And of course, the victory here certainly goes a long way. So I'm with you there. Keith Mitchell for both Andy and I over Brooks Koepka. Sung Jae Im versus Tommy Fleetwood. I'll go first. I'll go with Sung Jae. I think pretty objectively, he's best player in the field. Yeah, Daniel Berger maybe, but like the best situation with what he's done around PGA National, the way he's playing right now. Tommy Fleetwood has been much better than I think people want to give him credit for, because his European Tour stuff has been pretty good recently, going back to a place that he's had awesome results at. But I'm just slow to buy Tommy Fleetwood at the moment. I'll go with Sung Jae here.
Very fair. I think not factoring in odds, Sung Jae makes the most sense. I'm going to zag a little bit here. I think probably if they made this matchup, Fleetwood would be like plus 120 or plus 125 or something like that. I'm going to go with, do you have it up?
I'm going to pull it up. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go with Fleetwood because, I mean, he's been great at the Honda Classic, right? He's almost won here before, and you're right. He's playing better in Europe than people want to think. We don't look at European data as much, but he's been hitting the ball really, really well in Europe. And I think we have an opportunity here where Fleetwood gets to a course where it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit windier. I look at what Fleetwood has done at places like Shinnecock and Royal Portrush. And I just think this kind of plays right into his hands. And one thing I always look at, Rick, the last thing I'll say in Fleetwood, his odds are really low this week. Like on DraftKings, he's like 14-1. And so in my opinion, that's books saying, hey, we're good on your Tommy Fleetwood action this week. Like take that action somewhere else, bet someone else, but like, we don't need your Fleetwood action. So I'm going to roll the dice with Fleetwood this week.
Sungjae Im is minus 140, which I'm pretty sure was minus 120 when I pulled this. I swear it was minus 120. I'd have to go back and maybe look at the movement here, but I'm pretty sure there's steam coming in on Sungjae here. Tommy Fleetwood plus 115. Next up, Patrick Reed versus Ricky Fowler. I don't like either one of these guys, but we've got to make a decision here. Andy, which side would you like?
I'm going to zag. Patrick Reed. I mean, what? There's no case. There's no case
for either of these guys, is there?
Yeah, there's no case for either of these guys. What I will say about Patrick Reed is, on paper, I really like this course for him, right? I think Patrick Reed is at his best when it's windy, difficult conditions, right? And this is a weaker field. So I look at when is the only time that Patrick Reed has played good golf over the last 6 months? Bermuda, right? Where he almost won the Bermuda. That's another Bermuda course, firm and fast, super, super windy conditions, and a weak field. So I just like a situation where it's going to be a yuck it up week. Even the best ball strikers are going to hit the ball in the water. And suddenly you glance up at the leaderboard and it's like, oh yeah, of course Patrick Reed is T7 right now. He's the best scrambler in this field and the best player in this field in difficult scoring conditions over a large sample size. So I'm going to roll the dice with Patrick Reed. I feel terrible about it.
And I'll roll the dice with Ricky Fowler, and I feel terrible about it as well. Yeah, I mean, there's the recent form, or I should say long-term form. It's been basically 18 months, 2 years since we've seen kind of good Ricky, but he's won here before. He's got a runner-up finish. He's got a lot of great finishes at the Honda Classic. Again, he plays the bear trap very well. Is it because it fits his eye? I hope so. And I hope it's not just because he was a better player the 20 other times that he went through the bear trap. So I'll take Ricky. As you mentioned, I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah. How can you be?
How can you be? Denny McCarthy versus Lee Westwood. I'll spoil it. You and I are both on the same page. Which side are we going to?
Denny. I think this is kind of an easy one. I don't trust Lee Westwood anymore. I don't know. Did Denny read out really well for you too, by the way? Because if you do like 16 or 24 rounds, Denny's like the guy. He's played great.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna roll the dice with Denny. Great Bermuda putter. I think he's gonna have a good week. I like Denny this week.
And we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of remember the back-to-back runner-up finishes for Lee Westwood, and it was like the resurgence of Lee Westwood. Yeah, he hasn't been good since. Right. So you give me Denny, and even though his 24 rounds go back to last season and things like that, he also had like a top 5 finish here last year. I quickly picked Denny's name, which I imagine means we're on the wrong side of it, and Lee Westwood's just going to win this thing. But both on Denny there. That leaves us with Brian Harman versus Aaron Wise. I'll go first. I'm buying into the good things that are coming out of the Wise camp. And quite frankly, if you're going to buy those things, there are a few spots better than PGA National for him. He's got some good results here as well. The flatter courses allow for the worst putters, or more bad putters. I don't even know what word I'm looking for to find some success here. So I'm going to go with Aaron Wise over Brian Harman.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I like both of these guys a lot this week. I'm playing both of these guys in DraftKings. I bet Brian Harman. So I'm going to ride with Harman. He has been hitting the ball. He had this like terrible ball striking run for like 6 months. And then suddenly he started to get it going again at the beginning of this season. And surprisingly, the only thing that Harman really hasn't had working that well is the putter. And Harman is a really good Bermuda putter. He's surprisingly good in like difficult scoring conditions, right? He's actually had some more success at US Opens and on harder courses than you would think. Pretty decent wind player too. He hits like a very low piercing draw that I think should play well in the wind. So I'll take Harman, but I like both of these guys. These are tough ones. Producer Mina doing fantastic work as always.
As she always does. Andy, that leaves us with one final thing to do. It's our one and done selections. As indicated, you are like $1.7 million in the clear, and you have an opportunity to add to that lead this week. So as our leader, You get to lead us off.
I'm going to go with Louis, who we haven't really. Where do you net out on Louis this week, Rick?
Pretty good. Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
the only concerns around Louis a couple of weeks ago when he played was like, oh, we haven't seen him in 3 months. And we kind of dispelled that very, very quickly. It's not like he sits on his couch. And then he played well. He played like Louis. He putted well. He gained across the board. And yeah, I mean, if you look at like the last 100 rounds, Louis Oosthuizen's name is very close to the top of the list on the PGA Tour. He's been very, very good. So yes, I'm quite warm on Louis Oosthuizen.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like where else would I want to use Louis? I don't know if I want to use Louis at majors. Obviously, you can make that case, but I still think I would like rather use. There's some other guys I would rather use ahead of him at majors still. And I think we have the rare opportunity this week with Louis where how often ever do we get major championship courses and major championship conditions with a bad field?
That's true.
Right. So perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect type of course for Louis Oosthuizen, except
Good
he's
point.
not having to beat Morikawa and Rahm and Hovland and Cantlay and all those guys. So I think this is kind of the perfect spot to deploy Louis.
That's actually a really fascinating point you just made. Yeah, I think it is a good spot as well. Okay. Here's the fade of the week for all you people who have joined just for this moment. To hopefully end my streak of 6 consecutive missed cuts and to hopefully add another $1 to my total, I am going with Billy Horschel, which I'm not a big Billy guy, but I think his metrics are better than people want to give him credit for. There's also kind of a weird thing where, I don't know, like, listen, I'm getting a top 5 guy in the betting odds that I'm really not going to play anywhere else outside of maybe Zurich if we do that and he gets like Sam Burns or somebody again. But like, I have little reason to save Billy. He's like 18-1. I think I just have to do it and hope to God he plays the weekend.
Billy's a good pick. It makes sense. It's a similar thing with Louis, right? It's like, where else are you going to use Billy Horschel, right? Like maybe the Wyndham, maybe probably still not the match play, right? I guess maybe Zurich.
What are the chances he goes back to back, right?
Yeah. So I really like the pick. I think it's a sound pick. He's been playing really good golf lately. He was in the mix at Torrey. He came out of nowhere in Phoenix. Yeah, he's been really good. So I feel good about it for you.
This is the week. I think this is you can't go 7 in a row. Right. No. Although I think I thought that last week as well. Okay, Andy, any final thoughts for Honda or anything else before we get out of here?
I don't think so, man. I'm excited for this tournament. I'm kind of even more excited to talk more Saudi stuff with you later in the week. So definitely look out for that podcast later this week.
Yeah, that'll be Thursday. And then Andy and I will be back for the Friday scramble where we'll do kind of, first round recap, looking ahead to round 2, props, odds for the rest of the Honda Classic. So that will be fun. Again, presented by PrizePicks. The code you're looking for is Rick, 100% instant deposit match up to $100. And it's absolutely fascinating what they're doing over there. Big thanks to producer Mina, does all the hard work behind the scenes. That right there is Andy Lack. You can find him on Twitter at ADP Lack Sports, and you can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your Tuesday Scramble. We'll catch you next time.